Hi everyone, welcome to the Francis Fogel Story Strategist, designed for purposeful founders and custodians of businesses in London and the South East who want to use storytelling to improve their businesses and their own lives and the lives of those around them. Today I have a very, very old friend of mine called Guy Wimpory, who is a person who comes with the wearing the hat of what good looks like. I usually talk to people who fit into the camps of what good looks like and or how to do good storytelling. In fact, Guy probably talks to both of those. And without any further ado, I'm going to invite Guy to introduce himself. And soon after that, I'm going to ask you, Guy, to tell us all your story and how this whole thing came about. But before we get into it, actually, Guy, we've known each other for 20 years, haven't we? I think.
Wow. Is it that long?
I
Yes,
think
could well
so.
be. Yeah, yeah. We met when I was running a sponsorship agency and you were working in art insurance for AXA, I
That's
think.
that's right. Why don't you give us the headlines of kind of who you are
Yeah,
today? And then I think that would be interesting for people to hear is how these kind of things serendipitously work out and how you and I have kind of come to be back in touch after such a long time. So yeah, who are you today, Guy, these days?
sure. Okay. Well, these days I'm at a point in a career that I've bumbled through really, and I run a glamping business amongst one or two other things. So I run. I have two glamping sites. I'm not the landowner. We'll go into that a little bit. I have a converted American school bus, Skoolie stays, and an eco cabin, the Vacationist eco cabin. One's in East Sussex and one's in West Sussex. And I've been running those. I've been running the glamping business for 3 years now. And I'll tell the story of how I came into that because it's not what I've always done. As I say, when we met, I was doing sponsorship and I had a sort of business background, I had an events background. Um, but I found myself here today after taking some time out with my family to travel, which is what I really love to do, to get outside and do that with my family and see as much of the world as I can and not be at a desk and not be managing people, which is what I've done a lot of my career. So yeah, now I live in the glamping world and I work with landowners and I really strive to give people a great experience in the British countryside. Um, and there's very much an environmental foundation to that. What we do is it's important that people experience the countryside in a very eco-friendly way. And so we've designed our bus and our cabin to to deliver some of those ideas to them.
And I should just share with people that I actually spent last weekend with my family in the Vacationist, which is one of Guy's glamping locations in East Sussex. And I can verify that it very much was uh, 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 an experience of how to live off grid. And in the main, that was a very luxurious experience. The children very much enjoyed the novelty of a compost bin, compost toilet,
Yes.
which comes with full instructions on the wall as to how you're supposed to use it. And there's what Guy calls a vanity, what's it called? Vanity trap?
Vanity flap.
Vanity flap,
Yeah, yeah.
which is where your poo goes. And
Yeah.
women are encouraged to lean forward to make sure that they take advantage of where the wee goes. And then you have a little pot on the side with your sawdust for popping into the vanity area. And it was all very fun, actually. And I think the children, for the first time, kind of understood what a toilet actually was. And
Yeah.
also, we had to be mindful of our hot water, which was dependent on the solar panels. And my husband got caught out once and had a refreshing shower, probably my fault and one of my children's for having had too much of a luxurious shower just before that. And then of course the electricity is also, it's all off grid. It's a really lovely experience. And I must say, every time I go glamping, which is not infrequently, we seemed to luck out with the weather, and we very much did.
Mm.
And had, I mean, we were sunbathing outside the Vacationist and very much felt like we were on holiday and had our own field. And God knows my children were running around naked in the field in complete privacy. So I can vouch for the fact that it's very much off grid, very eco friendly, and very luxurious. So there's the shout out for the Vacationist. We've got that one
Thank
out of the
you.
way.
That's great. And the shout out for the toilet. I'm glad we got there straight away.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't invent this toilet, by the way. It's from a well-known manufacturer, and it's a good one. I mean, we spent a year living in a bus in America, and that was our first experience of compost toilets. And the one on that bus wasn't as good as this one, and I had to clean it out fairly regularly. So I also became pretty intimate with them. But it's interesting you should mention your kids sort of starting to understand how a toilet works a little bit, because yeah, it's a bit like well, you know, it's there to see, isn't it? And it's there to be explained. I find that what's springing to mind is when you live in London and you go down into the tube and you pop up somewhere else, you don't really understand how it all connects. You don't know where things are in relation to one another. But if you walk around, if you travel, if you go slowly, things make a bit more sense. You have a different understanding, and even our toilet delivers that experience.
Absolutely. It really, really
That's
does. It really, really does. And actually just the bespoke nature of how you've built the thing. And what's so lovely about what Guy and his wife have done is that they've produced some really beautiful books, which you are greeted with when you come into the Vacationist. Skoolie Stays and the Vacationist Eco Cabin, as Guy is holding up to the camera now, if you're listening to the podcast. And they tell the story, and you can tell that Guy comes from a marketing and comms and sponsorship background because of the generous gift of those stories to guests as soon as they get there is kind of what came to my mind as soon as I saw them, and gave me something to do. I sat down on the bed and read the books, and you know, was much more familiar with Guy's story than I was before I got there, even though I knew a bit of it. And he's even off grid in the sense that I didn't find the Vacationist on Canopy and Stars, you know, which is my go-to aggregator for all things glamping. Massive shout out to them, but Guy and others choose not to be listed on those aggregators. And in fact, Guy contacted me on LinkedIn. We've got some mutual connections, and we've kind of been in the same world on the periphery of each other for a couple of years. And I think, Guy, you saw one of my posts and then messaged me to say, well, why don't you come and stay with us at the Vacationist?
I think that was actually Ruth, my wife, my business partner, who did that. Yeah, and she's connected with you through a Happy Startup.
Yeah, that's right. That's camp. Right. Did Ruth come on summer camp?
She did. Right, yeah, she was working there. Yeah.
So we met there. There. And summer camp, for anyone who doesn't know, is a business hippies convention that happens once a year in September. It's quite an intimate affair of about 150 people, and Ruth was working there and I was doing a workshop there. Yeah, so that's where we met. But then I don't know, I mean, it's such a serendipitous world because, yeah, just going back a bit, you and I, as I say, have been connected for 20 years. And yeah, do just tell us, Guy, what you were doing 20 years ago when we met.
So I ran a sponsorship agency, just myself and occasional people helping me out, called Sponsor Monster, no longer operating. And it's like a dating agency for sponsors and rights holders. And I had lots of great clients and did a lot of work, particularly in the arts world and culture. And I think this was possibly through Museums at Night we met, which is a fantastic thing where people could go and stay in museums overnight and sleep at night, and also experience special events put on at night. And I think that's where we first had some connection, possibly Francis. So this was after I went freelance, after working in travel and events for a long time in recruitment. Eventually, I went freelance, and that's, I think, where we met, and I have been freelance ever since. So I've done quite a few different things, but always in marketing and management and sales, and certainly in what we do now. We do use some aggregators for our marketing. not Canopy and Stars at the moment. They are fantastic though. But I'm always trying to kind of make sure the SEO on our website is working as well as it can. And you know, we've got partnership marketing going on with people, other companies that you know address the same demographic and so on. So that side of my experience is still very much at play with what we do now.
Cool. And actually, I wonder if this isn't the right place to go into one of the one of the segue areas that we could go into today, and that is your second business, which actually I did not know about until you flagged to me when I was staying at the Vacationist. Do you want to tell people what you're building now as well?
So this is the Eco Glamping Club. So not fully launched yet, and this is an interesting one, and it's come completely organically from us and the bus, and then the cabin, which is our second unit. So planning and getting a license for camping and glamping in the UK is not always straightforward. I don't own any land. I wish I did. I don't own any land. So from the outset, when we decided to build the bus and give this experience of bus life and countryside life to guests, we had to go and find land. And find a land partner, that meant. So we approached farms and country estates and all sorts of things. And we learnt as we went, as we were conversing the bus. So it was quite a journey. And what it led us to, and we knew that the bus being on wheels literally gave us an advantage in terms of planning. We weren't quite sure of how that would work out at the time. But essentially, if we could avoid going through the full planning process of getting a campsite license, basically, we thought that would be a good thing. It would be easier. And if there was a way to do that, we wanted to find out about it. And so the bus being on wheels allowed us to call it a caravan. It is technically a caravan. And this is using the Natural England's Caravan Sites and Controlled Development Act. And Natural England, they are a government department, advisory department, who grant planning exemptions to those who want to have a campsite or a glamp site. And there are various categories amongst this act. And paragraph 5, where you can have a certificate of exemption for your planning, is allowable if your unit is self-contained and on wheels, essentially a caravan. Now, as you know, the Vacationist Eco Cabin and our American school bus don't look like a caravan when you use that word in its normal sense, but they are technically. So when we first got our planning exemption for the bus, we had to go and find organisations that are out there that have been granted by Natural England this paragraph 5 exemption authority to essentially work with a checklist and make sure that glamping units and camping units adhere to certain rules. And then they get a planning exemption, and it's a much easier, more streamlined process than getting full planning. So that's what we did. But so there are various companies out there. I mean, the one that most people will have heard of is the Caravan and Camping Club. That is one of many, many companies that have a Natural England exemption authorization, so they can grant these licenses. And we chose another one, and we went through the whole process of getting our exemption certificate so we could operate legally. And that involves dealing with the local authority, the public authority, and also neighbours and things like that, and environmental departments as well, to make sure everything is as it should be. It was a bit of a painful process, though. It was a bit harder than we thought it should be. So this led us to start our own organisation. We thought we could do it slightly better than some we'd worked with. And also we really wanted to underscore the environmental aspect for what we were doing. We really wanted to make sure that our off-grid units that we worked with, that we developed ourselves, and others that we knew were out there, were doing the right thing, and also that guests that came to stay on them could find them and know that they were really doing the right thing environmentally, and that those things were checked really, and they could be sure that staying on them they would get the best kind of eco experience they can, and know that things were developed and and run as best they can. So we started the Eco Glamping Club, and we have been authorised by Natural England to give certificates to glamping units and camping units that will comply with our own code of conduct and constitution that we've put together, that has been authorised by Natural England. And that's where we are now. And it's very new. It's not launched fully yet. I'm not giving anyone the website just yet because it doesn't look great, because it's still coming together right now. But we have got our first licenses going out now, and we will be launching that fully soon, and talking to other partners out there, so that we can get other fantastic off-grid units that are on wheels. That's the niche we're in. To sign up with us, and we can help them be found in a marketing sense, and we can help them pursue best practice for sustainable glamping methodologies.
So good. Thanks, Guy. And actually, I've seen Guy's website. I've had the privilege, and it's really not that far off, I think, being public anyway. So definitely you do watch this space. And of course, this is very, very interesting in connection with what I'm doing, because I've worked out that there's a number of landowners in this country who might be farm owners, or indeed they might be pub landlords owners, who are sitting on, as I describe, a gold mine of stories, who are looking to pivot their businesses or diversify their income streams. And I've gone to town in sort of immersing myself in the history of both the pub and farming kind of worlds to the degree that one can in 6 months. Very mindful of the fact that, of course, I do not come from either a pub landlord or farming background, but kind of having now sort of buried myself in thought around rewilding, and having got my carbon literacy qualification, I'm very mindful of the effect that farming has had on this country, and how, as I describe it, the kind of pastoral idyll that we all understand to be beautiful nature is in fact quite different to what originally nature was in this country, and a lot has changed in the last 100 years. Now we're at the point, because of carbon literacy and climate change, and just the state of affairs, that it is not sustainable financially or environmentally for people to kind of be farming in the same way as they always have. And so those that have inherited land are having to, for financial and also just from a kind of environmental viewpoint, think about how they might use that land differently. So there's a really exciting opportunity for diversifying. People want to follow in the footsteps of Isabella Tree and Nep Estate and Rewild. They know that that's the right thing to do, and there is actually a lot to be said from an ecotourism point of view about how that's very attractive for people. And I'm on a mission to help those who are trying their best to do their best in their businesses and for their communities and for the world, to do it as easily as possible and not kind of reach these or find themselves up against difficult challenges unnecessarily. So it might be that people have land that they could host those that are not privileged to have the land, but I would like to have a glamping business on. And together with those, and I love the collaborative approach, together with those businesses, to tell really wonderful stories about how people might like to come and experience that space, and how they can do, as you say, do it in an environmentally aware way. And so there's a lot of potential in what I'm doing and what you're doing and how we can do it together. And so I'm really excited about what you're building. And I think that from a community point of view as well, I mean, it was really fascinating, actually. You sent me off on a lovely walk around the land that the Vacationist is on. And I did not realize that there was a beautiful festival site right next door before I got there. And we walked through this amazing site, which presumably is rented out to people who want to host very small scale but still brilliant festivals. And I thought we were going to walk to the pub, and you'd said to me before, interesting choice, quite far. And I was
Mm.
like, yeah, it's fine. You know, me, my husband, and my 6 and 4-year-old are going to be fine. And we
Yeah.
got about 45 minutes in and hadn't even left the farmland and met with James,
Yeah.
whose mum and he own the land on which the
Yeah.
Vacationist is on. And he very
Yeah.
sweetly gave us a
Mm.
lift to the pub, thank God.
Yeah, that's
Except
great.
we were then stranded. I don't think I told you this. We had to hitchhike. Or maybe I did. We had to hitchhike
Yes, you
back.
mentioned. Yeah.
Anyway,
Proper adventure.
it was an adventure.
Yeah.
But James then was able to kind of share with us that on that land there's also a retirement village, an equestrian centre, and so you've
Yeah.
got these weird combinations, haven't you, of a number
Yeah.
of businesses already on these
Yeah. Yeah.
properties.
It's a great, James's Land is a great kind of example of diversification, actually. So yeah, you mentioned you've got a sort of retirement home, and there's a fantastic craft gin distillery there as well. There's a dog grooming salon. There's all sorts of things. And the festival site you saw has done sort of music festival themed weddings, a lot of that kind of thing and events. And we're also looking, I'm helping them out to do more sustainable events as well, and to work in that world a little bit more and get various accreditations. That's something we're interested in, to make sure that we are working with green partners. And it's about diversifying. It's about finding the income that all the stakeholders need for their lives, but doing it in an interesting and sustainable way, for sure.
I want to just rewind as well back to our background in
Mm,
sponsorship and
mm,
talk about it with the from the viewpoint of community care. So your background, as you said, was kind of in brokering the sponsor and the sponsee.
yeah.
And I was at the time working in-house, managing the marketing, comms, sponsorship, PR, branding, and all the rest of it for the
Mm,
world's only art
mm,
insurance company, AXA Art, as you say, well, as you remember rightly. And so I was kind of I was the sponsor. We were looking
mm,
for who we could support financially in order to deliver back to us what we needed from a branding, marketing,
yeah.
um, introduction to our ideal client point of view.
Mm,
And this is also a really fascinating element of the work that I'm trying to help people feel more confident in, because up to now, I think people, well, historically have paid agencies to work in silo, to first of all do marketing and branding and sales, secondly, and PR, secondly, to kind of do learning and development and HR well, thirdly, to do customer retention, horrible word, and kind of UX, and fourthly, to kind of do community care and sponsorship and outreach work. And my hope is that I can aggregate all four of those things into one
mm,
using one story, not least because it costs 4 times less for the business involved.
yeah.
But also it just makes far more sense if we don't work in silo and all the things are joined up.
Mm,
And community care is a really interesting one, because I think historically and kind of from a colonial point of view, sponsors have been in charge, and sponsees have had to go cap in hand to ask for money to make things happen,
yeah.
in the arts and in kind of welfare and education research. And it's over the last 20 years that you and I have seen this world evolve, become more and more a case of that who's in charge and who's the underdog sort of thing has
Mm,
leveled out,
mm,
thankfully.
mm.
And yeah, do you want to, where's your brain going with this, basically?
Yes, that is true. It was, when I ran a sponsorship agency in that world, it was hard work, because I was on both sides, and the point was to kind of, find the mutual benefit for both sides. Um, but it was very tough doing that, and that's why I kind of liked describing it as a sort of dating agency, because it just felt like dating a lot of the time, making sure everyone got out of the relationship what they wanted. And honestly, after a few years of doing it, I made a living out of it, and put some good matches together and had a great time as well. But it felt sort of mismatched, really. It felt like the sponsors always had the upper hand. And it felt like there was sort of too much begging going on, trying to find kind of someone to just please help them with their, very worthy um, um, projects, really. So I'm out of that now. Doing what I do now is quite different. And I mean, you've moved on, you do something different, but it's certainly added to kind of my experience of that's got me to this point, and in a way, I suppose the link that I can excuse me put to that is working with the landowners and working with people like myself who have an idea or a glamping vision or a glamping dream but don't have the land. There is some kind of correlation there with what I used to do, I suppose, actually. However, that relationship is also changing. These farms that used to have a very clear way of life, a very clear purpose, a very clear meaning to their life, now it's not so easy for all sorts of reasons, and this farm diversification, that's what's come out of it, and hence the boom in glamping, and hence gin distilleries and such like being on farms. And so it's interesting to see that change, and it's amazing how quickly it has changed. And even in the 3 years I've been working in glamping, I'm seeing that change as well. Yeah, I think the point you make, and the point of what you're doing, Francis, looking at the stories behind businesses and the stories behind ventures, whether it's glamping or other uses of land, I think that is so key. And when we picked up contact again, it really did speak to me, I think, actually, and really kind of got me enthused, this idea of what you're doing, because I don't think it's leveraged enough. I think plenty of people kind of realize their story and want to make something of it. And those people that do that, they're doing it for the right reason, but actually it connects so well with clients, and it connects so well with their marketplace if it's done authentically. So, I guess going back to sponsorship, I found that so often it was those sponsees, the rights holders who really had some passion and had a meaning and a drive behind the story of what they were doing, doing it for a reason. These weren't sports events to make money. These were usually something driven by an artistic aesthetic or motivation or something like that. And those are the ones that really works and really interesting to work with. And I think that's still the case with business in all sorts of ways, and that includes my business. And as I mentioned to you, we get so many guests. We get a lot of feedback from our guests. We always seek it out. We get so many guests who use the word inspired after they've been with us. It's particularly with the bus, because that's the most recent connection they can understand with what I did with my family, going away a few years ago and traveling in a bus around America and taking that moment to change our life. And so people that go and stay on the bus, they connect with this story. So they're not just staying on a bus, they're connecting with the history of why that bus is there, and the people who brought it there, and why. And not just me and Ruth, but our kids as well. And they look at the book and they see the pictures of our kids a few years ago, looking a bit younger and sitting on a bus roof in Florida or Montana or whatever. And it means something to them. They can connect with it. And I think for me, that is the most worthwhile part of what we do, actually. And the cabin has part of the story thread going through that as well. And whatever we do next, we'll have too. So we all have journeys in our careers, and it's that thread of kind of story that I do get, and is really important to me as a motivation to make me work every day and get up in the morning. And so I think what you're doing is quite important, actually, and I hope lots of people realize that.
Oh, Guy, thank you. Yeah, I do too, because part of my work is about allowing people to tell what I call the shadow. Again, it's not my term. Anyone who has any sort of awareness of Freud and psychotherapy will know that the shadow side of things is a thing. But there's a shadow side of stories. And, something that's really irritated me in the last 20 years is seeing how much more of the shiny side of storytelling is going on in the world of toxic marketing bullshit, as we call it over in Better Bolder Braver, which is my community that I run to help people helpers to do more good in the world by putting themselves out there with greater clarity, confidence, and joy. And there's, as I say, a lot of toxic marketing bullshit out there, making them super intimidated about doing that. And part of that toxic marketing bullshit is to try to present as perfect. And that's bullshit. And if you're a farm, you will have a story, and some of that story will not be perfect. You may have employed people, you may have done things, your grandparents may have done things that, you know, now looking back, you realize it's not amazing for the planet, it's not amazing for society. You know, we're all guilty of that. We all come with some interesting baggage, and it's not our fault, and it wasn't their fault. And, you know, there's choice, but there's also intergenerational inheritance and awareness, and to kind of know that and to be able to own it and to be able to tell a story of change is really important. And you know, more and more, going back to the sponsorship thing, you know, back in the day, if you had some money in a branding or marketing budget, you would sponsor a gallery and an exhibition so that you could get your logo on things. You could invite your high net worth clients to a nice drinks reception. You would get exposure to the patrons at the gallery, who might be your ideal clients as well. And there would be some networking opportunities for you and your the people that would bring you work from elsewhere. And now the reason why you need to be a part of society as a corporate is because people are holding you to account. This is a perfect storm right now, where, you know, rightly so, corporate social responsibility is not just a sort of token namesake bit of branding bullshit. It's actually a really important strategic move to punching with or above the big boys, or making sure that the people that buy from you remain confident that what you're doing is mindful of the environment, is kind of contributing to net zero and to the goals that this country is responsible for hitting. And you know, the diversity and inclusivity of a workplace is almost at the mercy now, it's the other way around, of the kinds of organizations that it can support, so as to learn from them and embed itself in them, and to show its customers and its people that it does care and that it's a citizen of the world. So it really has changed in the last 20 years. We've been really privileged to see that change. And whilst I'm not in the world of sponsorship per se, it's so central to the way in which I want companies that I work with to feel that they can be involved, and to have others see them as being responsible, and to show how they can tell the story of genuinely wanting to be responsible for good move forward and for change. So yes, I see it as a very important piece of work that I now feel responsible for being a part of. So I'm glad that it resonates with you and with others.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you know, that realization is something I've just gradually found my way towards, really. You know, talk psychotherapy, this will to meaning, you know, the idea of meaning in your life, and that is the motivator for many people. That's when I read about that many years ago, Viktor Frankl, I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I didn't really think about ever particularly bringing it into my work world. I thought, well, you know, I only in retrospect did I see when something had real genuine meaning and genuine authenticity, to use an overused word. Did it get traction and mean something to me and those that connected with it? But now, anything I do in business for myself, it has to have this meaning. It has to have a story behind it, and then I can really be enthusiastic about it, and then I can really connect with people, and that makes it all worthwhile, really. And you know, making a difference in your own small way, to whether it's a family who are staying on the bus and the cabin is, you know, does make it worth it for me. And there'll be bigger organizations who feel the same thing and earn a lot more money and make a bigger financial impact in the world than my small business. But if you can, you know, if they can really leverage that and understand that, yeah, it's important.
So I think you're bringing up a really important point, which I also want to make sure people are aware of in terms of my work, which is I choose not to go in and run workshops for people and sort of sell my services as kind of company-wide. They are of company-wide benefit, of course, but my ideal client, my positioning work was very much sort of centered on the founder or leader or custodian, as I really like to regard them, of these businesses. And entirely selfishly, I think we can be honest and say that, you know, as business owners and founders, it's of interest to us from a kind of existential point of view to feel like we can, or rather die feeling that we've done something. It's a selfish act. So, you know, I don't want people to walk away from these conversations and think that I'm some sort of evangelist for, you know, carbon literacy. Yes, I am, but I'm also very much aware that this is a very solipsistic, in some cases, in the nicest possible way, narcissistic project of, you know, working your own shit out, basically. And if you've got to a position where you have, you know, perhaps founded a business, now it's leveled out, and you want to come up with a legacy plan to allow you to walk away with your head held high, knowing that you've done good by yourself, your family, your people, and by society, then this is a project of how can we make that all make sense to you and to others. And sometimes it's a project of helping people let go, because in the world of entrepreneurialism and sort of custodianship, it's difficult to let go. And back to the farms, you know, as you say, you know, the landscapes had to change, and psychologically that's a massive shift that we need to respect people are having to make in this day and age, after hundreds of years of doing things in a certain way. And it's difficult, and the space needs to be held sensitively while they're doing that.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, I mean, there are all sorts of landowners out there, but talking about farms, you know, there is sadly a high rate of suicide amongst farmers, for example. It's a stressful it's a stressful way of living your life, being a farmer and being a custodian of all that land, and having to make a living which until recently has mainly been in the traditional way, and still is in many ways. But the economy has changed, the world has changed, globalization has changed everything. It's a stressful place to be, I think, for many landowners, actually. That's talking about farmers, but you know, there are other landowners out there, whether they're private estates or country houses, and actually, you know, I've been privy a little bit to how difficult it can be to make these things work financially, and for the communities around them. It's not straightforward necessarily.
So in terms of what's next for you, are you going to focus on the glamping sort of support business side of things, or do you want to build another?
Yeah, bit of both, I think, really, potentially. So we want to kind of take the Eco Glamping Club forward, and make sure we're working with as many people out there as we can who we can be useful to, both in terms of allowing them to get the planning they need to operate, but also to take their glamping units, whatever they might be, to an audience. That could involve website development, even that kind of thing, which is something I do also. So there's many ways in which we can help there. So yeah, a bit of that. We might do a third glamper ourselves as well. I think we'd like to. You know, we've done 2 in 3 years, spending quite a bit of money building them, and building them ourselves as well. You know, we haven't just paid someone to build them; we've done it ourselves and learned on the job. So it does take it out of you a little bit, and does take it out of your bank account a little bit as well. So you know, we're not rushing into a third one, but you know, we've got a good recipe, and it works. You know, they're good working, healthy businesses, and so yeah, we'll build something else as well, for sure. It's about having the right spot on the land, and luckily we work with 2 very good landowners at the moment, so there are opportunities there. And it's about finding the right thing to build. And as you can guess, you know, it's got to not just be something that sells. It's got to be connected to us somehow, and we've got to be able to put love into it when we design it, and when we build it, and when we furnish it, and when we find its place. It's got to mean something to us. So, you know, we're not quite sure what that is yet. So certainly, yeah, it's a bit of both. It's working in the industry, and it's building another unit. But also, there are other opportunities with these landowners. My background in marketing and sales and events as well leads me to have all sorts of discussions with them about things we might do. And so whether Vacationist is and that festival site there, we've got ideas we're discussing right now that reach into various industries and worlds. And underlying all that is, get people there and get them to experience it and have a great time and do it in a sustainable way. And help the landowner to make more of it, and I hope, well, important to me, and I think everyone I work with, have a bit of fun doing it as well. I don't want to work and not have fun anymore. That's not fun.
Yeah, this is getting me on our second mountain in our 40s, kind of talking
Yeah.
right now. With two children that I have two, Guy has
Yes.
two, and we both had them just before lockdown, kind of thing.
Mm.
Yours are slightly older than mine, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then you took them off around the world. So
Yeah, we did. That was a big change, and that's what led to us doing this glamping business. So we just very quickly, this, but we decided to take a year out. Ruth and I traveled a lot before kids, and then we had kids and school and everything else that goes with it, and finding a house with a garden so they can run around and all the things that you think you might want to do. And you find yourself in one place and not moving very far, and that's not natural to us, actually. So we worked out, actually, we could go traveling if we could just work on the finances a bit. We could go away again, and that traveling ended up being living in an American school bus in America for a year, and we drove around the States and we homeschooled our kids. This was July 2019 for a year, and that was our effort, partly to show the boys that there's a different way of living. There are different people out there, not just on the TV, but this is what they do. And you don't have to necessarily work a 9 to 5. You don't necessarily have to do all the jobs that you think you know about. We just wanted to open their eyes, really. And in doing that, we opened our own eyes as well. Of course, again, it refreshed us. And when we got locked down in Georgia, when the pandemic hit, when COVID hit, we had a bit of time to kind of spend time with other people living in buses, actually, and think about what we do when we got back. And we knew we'd be sad leaving our bus in America. And that was the kind of spark to make us think, well, let's ship one back to England and do something with it. And here we are 3 and a bit years later, running a glamping business with the bus as our first unit. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's been great. And yeah, things have changed a lot for us.
I think another really big part of this for me and you is the community side of things. So I run a community, have done for 3 years, an online community. I am also the sister community to the Happy Startup School, I guess you could say, is how we've described it in the past. And I know the value of community, and so much more is being talked about in terms of community now. What's so nice about what you and I are building is that and the people that I'm interviewing for this podcast is that we're all kind of aware of each other's needs and working together. The other people that I've recently had on this podcast, for example, are making massive waves in sort of helping businesses to make sure that they are banking with and have pensions with banks, providers that are taking responsibility. So we're all looking out for each other and sort of pointing each other to the right people who can, I'm now sort of I'm delighted to be named as a kind of expert on a panel of other people providing sort of advisory services to businesses that want to become more sustainable. There's I interviewed Alistair Humphreys recently, who's an adventurer who is there, I think, to kind of fly the flag for it's all right to feel like you kind of need to run away sometimes, but how can you do that locally? So I think everybody's playing a part in our community to support where we can and where we're experts and have an authority in our own personal story. Others in sort of moving the dial slightly in where in other ways it might seem quite intimidating to do that. And those of us who've been on the edges of watching how climate change is really important can also see that the kind of eco anxiety, as it's called, for those people who are kind of relatively new to the idea that they might have to completely change things around, you know, it's our role to kind of support people emotionally and strategically so that it doesn't all fall apart, basically. And we're the kind of custodians of a big picture system change. So we're all in it together. So there's no competition really. It's more kind of, right, okay, I know a person who you want to speak to Guy. I don't know anything about like clause 5 in the bloody blah, but Guy does, so I'll just connect you with, and there's a lot of that,
Yeah.
isn't there, going
Yeah,
on?
there is a lot of that, and it's great. It's very refreshing. It's a very helpful community, I think, that we work in here, and because we're all doing it for the right reason. And yeah, I like that. That is good.
Yeah. And what's it like working with your wife?
That's great. That's great. Knowing she's going to watch it. Yeah, it has its challenges. We'll both say that for sure. We work at home. We don't go out to an office anywhere. This is a room in our house. Luckily, we've got kind of two places in the country we can go to a little bit. One half an hour that way, one half an hour that way. But yeah, it's been great because we've both done it for the right reasons, and it's come from our experience together. But
What's Ruth's background professionally?
So events also, and PR and
Okay.
marketing. She's a writer, really. So she still does some PR work, and has a part-time job also working in sort of stakeholder management and liaison too. So I mean, recently actually we've kind of changed things. Well, now we've reached a point where, like, okay, where are we? We've stopped. We've got two businesses operating well. We're kind of consolidating a little bit. We're starting Eco Glamping Club. I run most of it myself now because we just had to kind of stop and think, what are we doing? We're just sort of sharing stuff between us as it happens, and you do this and I do that. And structure was a little bit difficult sometimes, and with that kind of lack of structure, it can be a little bit stressful. So we made a decision that I'm kind of leading things on the glamping side at the moment. Ruth works with me on it when we need that assistance and her skills in different areas, but it allows her to do other things as well and focus on her career outside glamping too. And there may come a point, depending on how things go for us, that I look at other things for myself as well. But yeah, it's been great. We're very lucky to have been able to do it, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Well, you
Yeah.
say that, but I think a lot of it is discernment and sort of strategic thinking, whether that's conscious or not. And I talk a lot in my community to people, to coaches and people helpers, about what I call the work balance, because not least sometimes you need to pay the bills through other means. It's not the thing that you want to necessarily end up doing full time perhaps, but you have to do now. And actually, for those people who do have a work balance, which is most of us, there's a really nice story that kind of pulls it all together, and you can use one side of what you do to explain why you're qualified to do the other thing. And I think sometimes people are of the understanding, which is incorrect, that if you're not a purist and people see that you're doing more than one thing, that they won't trust that you're very good at any of it and that you're a jack of all trades. But I don't agree. I've described myself as a rainbow person all my life, a little bit good at quite a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
it's that somebody actually yesterday in my community came up with this wonderful phrase, rather than wearing a lot of hats, that she has a Technicolor dream coat with a number of pockets, and she brings out of each pocket the thing that's required in that particular situation with that particular person. And it's very much about we're the guides, not the heroes, and whoever we work with, we will bring the appropriate skill set out of the pocket that we wear all the time that's technicolored.
Yeah.
So in fact, diversifying your own skill set is so important in this day and age, and not to kind of go off in silo into any one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's so true. I went for many years until quite recently when people say, "Oh, what do you do?" when that question comes up, I kind of said, "Oh, nothing really." Yeah, I did lots. I was always busy, but I wasn't kind of set in a certain way. Once upon a time, yeah, I'd be able to say I was a director of an events company or whatever like that. It was simple and straightforward. But now I do lots of different things, and I don't necessarily want to have a conversation with it about it when I'm in a social situation. So I kind of, say, "Oh, not much," or I do a bit of this and a bit of that. And actually, a bit of this and a bit of that is fine. I do them all quite well, I think, and it's allowed me to kind of go one way with my career and then another way with my career, and some things have worked out and some things haven't. I don't think we should be ashamed of doing that. We're not born to be one thing, I don't think.
No, and everybody, the elephant in the room is the what do you do question. Everybody hates it.
Mm.
My friend Toby, who runs TEDx in Brighton, who you
Oh yeah.
probably know actually, who's been on the show as well, prefers what do you make? And so he's on a
Oh
mission to get everybody to ask that question instead, which,
yeah.
is nicer, but still requires you in the moment to be able to articulate a thing that you make.
Mm.
And sometimes, as you say, you don't necessarily want to talk about the thing you make or the thing you do. And in fact, it's kind of how you're feeling today. And
Mm.
anyway, this is kind of completely not, well, it's not seemingly relevant from what we were going to talk about today, but the meandering quality of this conversation, I hope, has been interesting for people, not least to kind of understand how, my business and Guy's are evolving. Just briefly, just in terms of the logistics, how are you going to work with the landowners and glamping businesses? What's your business model? Do you mind sharing a little bit about that, so that people can just be aware how it's going to work for you? Or is that not
Yeah.
quite ready yet?
Well, perhaps we haven't pinned it down entirely yet, but that's okay. It won't stop me talking about it. Essentially, we've got a few things we need to sign off first for our own get the last bits of the company set up, done, and launch the website and have the brand properly done and so on. And then we're going to, there are lots of the community you talk about is quite accessible through Facebook and things like that to find people who are trying to start up glamping businesses. And then there are other, there are websites like borrowmygarden.co.uk where landowners advertise their land, saying they want to kind of, they're interested in diversification. They're interested in renting out a field or letting out a field or letting someone use a field. And there are other things like that. So we've become aware of lots of gateways to landowners and people in the glamping industry. So we'll spread our feelers. We'll get out in the network a little bit and see who we can help really. We haven't got we're not going to have a target of making a certain amount of money or anything like that. It's not really about that. It's about, for us personally, it's about running a nice business where we make a living, where we work in a world and industry where we can add something genuine to it, and so it'll grow organically and as slowly or as quickly as it should.
But are we talking about an Airbnb? You'll take a cut of whatever people end up having to pay by way of rent of land, or are we talking about a consultancy business where once the relationship has been brokered and people then need to understand the legal and marketing elements of how to make the best of it, that's where you come in? Or is it both?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the latter, really, a consultancy business. I think that's where the quickest way we can help people is. As part of the club, we will have members. That's written into our constitution, but we're not looking to become an aggregator like Canopy and Stars or others that we do use, like Cool Stays and Host Unusual. That's not something we have ambitions to do. We're going to be more small scale, and it's really about helping the businesses rather than helping the people find those businesses.
Yeah.
We can do some consultancy and help build websites and consult on brand and stuff like that. But we're not looking to become an agency website where we have all these places that we're constantly farming out there through adverts, that kind of thing. I think that's done very well already by people like Canopy and Stars.
And actually, it's that peripheral. With what it sounds like to me is that you're going to be fantastic with a lot of the logistical stuff. And I'm even thinking now that it would be a really lovely thing to do to hold a very small festival on your festival land, for aspiring land custodians to come along and have a look at what it would feel like to actually do this themselves and to be given the opportunity to actually experience it and to have a way to interact with each other honestly around some of the anxieties that they have and fears that they have, and just some really honest conversations about what might come up. which is not provided by the aggregator services, which, as you say, are doing a wonderful job of already matchmaking people. So it's that peripheral care thing that is really needed at this time.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, actually. I mean, you know, there are events like, you know, glamping business show and stuff like that, where perhaps things like that happen a little bit. But that kind of event, I think, yeah, you could deliver a lot of good to people who need to hear about it and discuss and spend some time and see it all around them as well. Yeah, we should talk about that.
Oh yeah, I'm up for it. And also, so I will be going to the glamping show. I hope to see you there. And again, that's got its place. It's really important to kind of be showcasing all of the tech, the toilets, you know, and all the rest of it that people need to be considering if they're building a glamping business, plumbing, blah, 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 blah. But also, let's go back to the midlife crisis Second Mountain thing. Wouldn't it be lovely if you were thinking about how to diversify your business and a bit overwhelmed by all the things, plus you've got your own kids and you want to kind of exit, to actually spend 2 days with a load of other people of a similar mindset, just being able to let go a little bit around a fire. And I've seen the festival space, and honestly, I can say it would.
You found the bar in the trees.
It's got a bar in the trees. There's a PlayStation area in a tent. There's some mini golf. There's you know, it's lovely. There's a stage. There's some beautiful teepees. Like, it's great. It's perfect. So yeah, I'm really up for talking about it with you. That'd be lovely.
Great.
Thanks, Guy. It's been a pleasure. It's amazing to connect with you again. Super grateful to Ruth for having flagged what you do. And definitely do watch this space. I'll share in due course when Guy's ready to kind of launch the second business. And also, you've been very modest about the Vacationist. I think you were voted in the Times as one of the, what was the recent accolade that you got?
Oh yes, one of the best off-grid cabins to go and stay in, in the UK. Well, yes, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, we got on the front page of Bricks and Mortar, which we were quite happy about.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth checking out if you just want a couple of days. You don't want to spend a fortune. You don't want to travel very far with kids, but you want to feel like you've had a lovely time. I fully recommend it. Yeah, thanks everyone. Looking forward to having you back next time for another lovely conversation. Take care.
Thanks, Francis.